Hi everyone, thanks for coming to today's masterclass. Our special guest today and our teacher is Mr. Temme. Mr. Temme, could you take a second to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Steven Temme, and I'm a saxophonist in Washington, D.C. I played in the Marine Band here now for about 19 years, and I freelance with the Philadelphia Orchestra, the Baltimore Symphony, and other regional orchestras here.
All right, with that said, could everyone turn on their cameras just for a second so I could take a group photo? Okay,
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay, thanks.
Perfect. Nice to see everybody.
All right, now our first performer is Arav. I hope you're saying your name right. And he's going to play a premiere solo by Jules Demersimon.
Very good. All right, Arav. Is it Arav?
Yeah, it's Arav. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And you're playing, I've got 2 pages here.
I'm just playing the first page, the undone.
First page. Okay, very good. Super. Very good to hear you play. Awesome. Thank you. Good. I like a lot of the musical things that you're doing with this. So we're going to probably touch on some musical aspects and then also some technical aspects just on the saxophone, like how we're hearing this. So first of all, Arav, can you tell me where you're at, how long you've been playing saxophone, something about yourself?
I live in Georgia right now. I've been playing saxophone for I'd say 6 years or so.
Oh, great.
Going on 7, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Super. Good. Cool. Okay, so as we get into this, and I'll probably make some comments for everybody just generally about the instrument as we go along, because technique, everything is so intertwined playing an instrument. So I'm sure as we go along and learn this instrument, we learn about some of the idiosyncrasies that make it difficult in one sense. In another, it's kind of an easy instrument to learn because you just learn the fingerings and we go. But a lot of the nuance is quite difficult. And one of those aspects is just knowing the range of the saxophone in terms of its pitch spread. Okay, so when I'm talking about pitch, meaning intonation, like being in tune with yourself, being in tune with your own intervals on the instrument. Okay, so in a bit we can talk about some exercises, like what are good things to do to practice that. But my initial comment comes from some of the higher register things in the saxophone. So you might be aware that anything, I mean, really above G with an octave key is going to be what in terms of pitch, sharp or flat? Yeah, so it's going to be high in general. So that's just one thing to be aware of. So that very first interval, in fact, we kind of have a lot to choose from in a sense. So we want that interval to be spaced exactly correct. So let's try warming up the C, the high C, with even warmer sound, warmer air, I mean, like you're fogging a mirror almost. Okay, so it's warm, and we want to think about it just being a little lower, sitting a little lower pitch-wise for that opening interval. And then it comes, you know, some of the higher stuff comes back in the second line. And you've got the high E flats and Ds. So same thing, some of them edge towards being a bit high. You want to make sure those intervals are spaced really correctly. So can you play the opening interval and just stop? Good. Yeah. So again, a little warmer. Even can you try bringing it down a little bit more? Good. Good. So that might have actually gone a little into the flat range, but I'm glad you can do that. Like that's really, so this is what we're getting at. And again, playing saxophone, a lot of it is about flexibility, okay? And being able to modify pitch. And there's a number of ways to do that. Quickly talk about ways to work on flexibility. Have you done any exercises like pitch bending?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's two really good ones, right? So there's the top pitch bending ones like on high F. Bending that pitch as low as we can here. And then there's the other end of the horn getting our overtones, right? So from a low B flat or something. We're getting all those different overtones from the low notes. So the combination of those exercises helps us be flexible to move around. And the second is more of a manual, like using fingers to bring pitch down. So high C's, you know, I might add a first finger. You can hear that timbre difference by modifying. And there's lots of those trick fingerings as we go along. Now, the opening like this, I probably wouldn't modify. I would just try and put that pitch where it needs to be. So now play the opening like through the first two lines. Let's hear that one more time. Good, good, good. Okay, so we've kind of got two statements here, okay? So the very first opening statement, you know what that marking says above the G?
No, I can't read it now.
Okay, yeah. It's an abbreviation, that term. Okay, so recitative is, it's really an opera term for, say, a vocal solo that takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of, it's not metric at all, it's not metered, it's very brief. So he's trying to replicate a sort of recitative vocal style with the opening of this. Okay, now the second marking, which is the second measure of the second line, can you read those words?
It says vivo, like something vivo.
Yeah, più vivo. Okay, so what vivo means?
Yeah, it's like lively, with life.
Lively, yeah. And più is like a little. Okay, so a little livelier, a little faster, maybe a little bit more rhythmic. Let's see if we can make some nuance between the two opening phrases. Okay, so we have the opening statement, and it really happens twice. You have the upper octave and then the lower octave. Okay, so let's maybe draw some slight difference and then some more like insistence. Okay, so we might think about all right, so it's got this arc over the whole thing. But the first one might be slightly different than the second one. Okay, very dramatic. And I would say even the first statement can be pretty out of time. Okay. You have that echo of the second one. So can we just do that statement down to the low C?
Yeah.
Better. Okay, now I want you to let it go. Be even more free. Don't think about, okay, there are 30-second notes. It's got to line up here, here, and here. But think of it more of a gesture. It's like da 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 da. Okay, no matter what the time like actually is, let's hear the gesture of the statement. Good, and I liked the volume. It sounded louder. And I think for this opening statement, it's like super bold, right? Yeah, let's keep going with that. I think you can still play with the time. Let's just do the 30 seconds. Just the first one, can you try it? Kind of more of like a sweep. Perfect. Let it go a little bit more. Da 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 da. Cool. Okay. Now we're getting some sense for, it's kind of passionate at the beginning here. So I don't think we need to be so tied to a rhythm. Okay. And that's what that marking recitative means. Okay. A little bit more free. Okay. Now, when you end this first section, you've got the sweep up to the high E flat. And I like what you're doing by pulling the tempo, back a little bit on that first beat. So let's tie it to what came before. So you have a little bit of freedom. You get down to the low C. So you're doing this. You're pulling back. You've got this big grand sweep. So again, we're coming back to the very first principle of music, which is like pressure and release. Okay, so to make things come alive musically, and I'm getting more of that sense towards the end of this. Can you do from the low C and just do that sweep to end this line?
Yeah.
Good, and there's another one of those instances where think about the B, the CB, as being a full half step. The B wants to ride high naturally, so just be aware it needs to be a little wider. So bringing down the B, you might have to focus a little bit more, and everything gets harder when you're playing softer. or I should say everything gets sharper when you're playing softer. So be aware, now you're coming down in volume. So also the pitch needs to stay seated a little bit lower. Okay, very good. Well, now let's pick it up at the più vivo. And maybe we can think ba 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 da, ba 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 ba. So those 16th notes give us an anchor for now, a new kind of rhythm. And here you can be maybe a little more deliberate. So let's pick up now the più vivo. And maybe even that fermata can hint at what before, the more of the free style. So we've had this now, a little bit of rhythmic sense, but now as you come to the end of that, okay, pull it back and do even more relaxed. Let's put the whole thing together. So from the beginning to where we just played. Good. Wow. Really good. Yeah, you picked up on a lot of the stuff we talked about. A little more free at the beginning. Pitch is much better. I think you're more aware of the intervals. And then that last bit, I'd still say let the fermata be just a touch longer, just a little more relaxed at the end of that phrase. Okay, let's go on now to the next section, the lyrical part. So now it's soft. Here's some of these other high pitch things, high D flat. And on my horn, I usually do add a first finger for any high C sharp I've got or D flat. So think about resting those pitches lower and then the following C in the same way. Okay, so let's pick it up right there. Good. A flat's another one, just a bit high. So in general, like this is, you have an app or something that plays a drone pitch. The tuners are really good. Like I use this one called Tonal Energy Tuner, and it'll let you sound an interval. So let's, if I can get this. Okay, so it can play a pitch for me. And I just do so many pitch exercises by putting on a drone and then playing my scales to them, basically. And I'll play intervals, I'll play arpeggios, whatever it is. So in this case, if I'm struggling with that high note, you know, I might sound that pitch. Ooh, that's super sharp. So, you know, there's so much to choose from, but I need a goal to get me oriented. So I might just do the whole scale in that case. I'd put the drone on and play an arpeggio off of that. So a drone, this is for everybody across the board, are really, really helpful. You know, putting something on to hold a pitch and then play the scale off of it and just listen really acutely for that kind of interval. And And then in a passage like this, I kind of do the same thing. I'm like, what's my goal? So I can match, really accurately that sense of pitch. Good. Okay, let's see. Why don't we go a few more minutes left. So let's finish this little section before we go into the andante. So do the next one, C, G, C, and then all the way through right to the andante with the low C, the andantino.
Okay.
Good, very nice. Okay, so, and what's coming too, there's a lot of dotted rhythms, triplets mixed in. So he's kind of making time a little squishy. So we want to sort of help mask sense of time by direction of air. Okay, so where you just played, you have those two dotted 8/16 rhythm and a triplet. If we played it really strict, okay, that's one thing. But let's try and put air through that, be a little subtle about that rhythm. So it's because what's coming up after that is even this big chromatic run. It's like, as a listener, we're unclear about what the time is. And I think that's by design in this writing. Okay, so you might have. And you can sort of let that just gently go. In fact, doucement under that big chromatic run. Doucement means gentle, okay, in French. So real easy, nothing doing. Let's do the where you started. Beautiful, very nice. I think even more in that, just do that dotted rhythm. Air pressure all the way through that, even though it's soft, that my airspeed is going very fast. Super direct, very warm, but it's helping us through that rhythm just to kind of toss it off. Can you just play that rhythm? Okay, better. Da, 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 da. The G sharps, again, keep low. One more time through that. There we go. Okay, super. We have a few minutes now. Let's get into the andantino. So I want you to start in the same place, but keep going. Excellent. So the rest of it kind of goes on like this. So let's take this as a snapshot of what we're trying to go for in this style. So andantino, I might think of it as a couple clicks faster. So it's kind of a walk, maybe a sprightly walk, you know, a little bouncy, light. So you want things thinking going up. Even the 16th notes, just kind of let them toss off a little bit. Okay. Boom, bum, ba-da. So nothing is too stuck with the rhythm, but it's kind of moving a little bit more with it. So it's kind of dance-ish and a little fluid, kind of moving. So let's take the pickup at the andantino, beat 3 there. Yeah. So in particular, the dotted rhythm, ba, ba, da. I feel like it's a little bit metric, or the first dotted eighth is a bit stuck. So let's think 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 4, 1. 1, 4, 1. So it just kind of moves through and forward. Can you just do that? Good. Think about all of those notes under one phrase. Do da 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 da. Again. Okay, not so much accent. I think I'm hearing do da 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 instead of do da 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 da. Better. Okay. So that goes for the rest of this movement, actually, this section. But what I was hearing is a lot of on the beat kind of rhythmic, which is, I'm glad that you have that sense of time. So now let's remove ourselves. As you practice this going forward, I would suggest sort of yourself from straight, and you're kind of letting things glide. The beat is still there, but we're finding the music in between. Do ba da ba dum dee da 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 ba da 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 da. So it's one phrase and not this real vertical thing, more of a horizontal. Okay. Again, that's another kind of global musical comment. Is, you know, we're thinking phrases here. So it's super great to hear you play, Arav. I think you're doing great. And my big comment is just free yourself from some of the time, especially at the beginning. It's pretty loose. So we covered a lot of time things and pitch as well. And this will come up, I'm sure, across the board. But I really like what you're doing. It sounds great.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yay, thank you to Arav. You sounded great. I love that piece. It's really catchy. Next up, we have Claire playing Crescent Sonata Movement 1.
Movement 1. Okay. Okay. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
You tell me, same thing, a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how long you played.
I'm Claire. I'm junior in high school. I'm from like a little outside of Philly. And I've been playing for like, I think 8.5 years.
Okay, great. Super. And you've been working on Creston here for a while?
Yeah, I've been playing it for a while, yeah.
Good. And how much are you here?
I think all of this movement.
Bravo! All right, really great performance. I like, again, a lot of the things you're doing musically. I think especially the transitions work really well. The tempo changes that you've kind of gotten your sense for in your head work great. So I think the things I mainly want to address, and this could be a camera and like hearing through a screen, and unfortunately, like this is how we do things now, and it's hard to hear completely accurately for me. But I have a sense of some of the things I want to talk about are with articulation, mainly the staccato kind of articulation that you're getting. So we have this long versus some of the shorter passages articulation wise, and really trying to get the most resonance out of a staccato as we can. It's actually quite challenging on a reed versus like a string that you can pluck and it's like boom. So we have to do our best to replicate that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. You know, the tone sounds great from what I can hear through a computer. We'll do a couple of pitch things as well. And I think the pitch in your case isn't so much the intervals, but it's sometimes related to the vibrato wave. And sometimes some of the higher notes dip a little low. Sometimes it kind of spreads out this way to where the pitch might sink just a little bit. So we'll talk about keeping a really centered core to your sound as you add vibrato too. Because it sounds like you do have a really great center to your sound. We just want to maintain that in every aspect of your playing. Okay, really good. And then of course, there's just one technical thing, which Creston notorious. I mean, the very first opening is it feels so awful all the time. Well, anytime I play this, I'm like, oh, I just hate how that feels. But, you know, we gotta smooth out that motive, okay? Using side B flat or this?
Side.
Yeah. Yeah, I use side too. Ba, da, 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 da. So it's the second one that's kind of sticky. So that's just one of those practice things where I think you got to play it 1,000 times in a different pattern, you know?
Yeah.
Just try and trick your fingers into different patterns, you know, and you do that a million times and still it's hard. It's hard for me every time I look at that. So just smoothing, that's the only technical lick. It's easy to get blurred, right? Because all that feels so crammed together. So as much as we can space that out, be disciplined to keep the spacing of notes. I can't remember if you did it or not, but also another good way to do that musically is to put it tenuto on that very first opening. Ba, da, 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 ba, da, 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 da. So it doesn't have to be like strictly rhythmic, you know, but you can put some inflection to that motive anytime it comes. Just to help your way through it. And then it comes back, you know, later. So you can help yourself by pulling a little bit with the time. It doesn't have to be super metric all the time. But you know, that B flat G doing this is just, you know, hold yourself back. It's actually really hard to, you know, pace that and not want to charge forward, which is the case actually with a lot of this piece. And just being measured to be disciplined about the time. But I heard that a lot in the third and fourth line when you played this, and I loved, it was very metric and you weren't rushing. So that was super. So broadly apply that to the fast stuff in this piece. Let's go to after square 10. Okay, the more lyrical part. I liked how you transitioned into this. Now, when you get to the broader sustained notes, I want you to think about, here's where we go with the pitch and just keeping the line through the long notes. But maybe, yeah. Try not to let it spread too much this way where the wave gets interrupted, but keep the pitch where it should be and just, you know, it's like something on top. So can we do the pickups to that idea? Do you see where that is?
Like the A, B flat C.
Yeah, A, B flat, C to the high F. Da, 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 da. Yeah, that's, sorry, I think the camera's just kind of like having a hard time picking up. I know mine, you probably can't hear mine through Zoom too. I know it distorts it so bad.
Yeah.
But that is the correct spot. Let's keep going anyway, because I like how that's sounding. So take that spot and we'll go through where you have that 4-bar rest after 20. There you go. Good, good. Yeah, I think the camera's just, or the microphone's getting overpowered a little bit, but from what I can hear, I think that's more measured and just some nice vibrato on the top of the note. sometimes one particular note was D flat, or any D flat sometimes had a tendency for the vibrato to go maybe down. So if you're doing a jaw vibrato, just think about, you know, whatever syllable you do. Like I think about a V, va 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 va, but the wave being additive and not inside of the sound. So just be aware that that is one of those notes that can sink a little bit when you apply vibrato. Good, and then at square 20, I would say with these mordents to not blow by them too fast, but really place them. They have a little finish to the mordent itself. So at square 20, it's really placed. And it sounds like it's not just a and it helps the pacing to end this section. Can you do the pickups to square 20? Good. Yeah, sometimes just be aware again, the pitch, air going very fast to keep the pitch at a constant level. Sometimes it just wants to, some notes just sink a little bit. You might be opening for some reason, like when you, maybe it's to keep pitch down or I don't know, but just try and keep the same constancy of air. I think that's definitely the right idea, like what you just did there. Good. Okay, let's switch gears. I want to go to a section where we have the staccato that I was mentioning before. So let's jump to the next page, and why don't we pick it up? So this is after square 40, we get some of this. Yeah, so it's the line below square 40. Okay, and you've got the up to the high E. So any of these staccatos still have to have a depth to them that's still you know, buoyant, still full of tone. Sometimes the tongue can stop on the reed and it stops the vibration because we see the dot on the note and we think, oh, it's staccato, it's short, and it's almost closed off. So it's kind of hard to achieve an open staccato. So some air, as much as you can think about a string vibrating, and we're trying to get that idea. So why don't you play, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 after square 40, up to that high E, and just kind of go for a while through this section. You see where that is?
3 after 40?
4 after.
Oh, okay.
Ba, ba, up to the high E.
Okay.
Good. Okay. So a good example of this is right at square 50. And I want to talk about how not every staccato not every staccato marking is the same. So where you just ended the phrase, there's a couple staccatos, but they're going to be a little different because we're in diminuendo, we're winding the section down, so that even the length of those staccatos might be different than the the staccatos we had before here at square 50. So do me a favor at 50, can we play these tenuto ones? And I just want you to hear the full sound of what's going on here. You just play it real tenuto at square 50. Even longer. Can you play it like you would never play it this way for real, but almost slurred? Good, good. Feels funny, I know. It feels weird. But this is just an exercise to say, like, that's the fullness of sound that we want to get, even though we're playing short. So when I take it back to being staccato, I can still get separation between notes and yet still have it sound robust and full, okay? And that might be a softer syllable on the read. Like pulling, think about pulling away, da, 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 instead of da, da. Like we're not closing for the staccato, we're opening and letting more air surround the note. Da, 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 da. So go back to square 50 now, put the staccato back, but sort of feel the tenuto underneath it. Yes. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so do that for all the staccatos. So to my ear, and even, I know this is through a camera and it's even hard to tell for sure, but what you just did to me sounded like a more lovely staccato. I still got resonance to the note there. Actually, let's apply that before 50. Can we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before 50? Da 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 ding da 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 da. Nice. So even in different ranges, the staccato is going to feel different. So the lower ones, a little more resonant, da, da, breath behind it. And then if you look, let's say, what is it, 2 before square 50, actually 3 before, you've got that ba, 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 that single G, that's the staccato, sometimes gets a little lost, or it's like ba, 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 ba. So instead, ba, 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 ba. It's still important, and it still should get its due, so to speak, in terms of tone and resonance. So any of those single staccatos that go by quickly, just be aware that they still need their full breadth of sound underneath them. Super. Okay, let's go to a different section. The triplet, so turning the page, very lovely through 70. I loved that triplet section. Let's come out of it now into 80. Sort of a similar thing with the mordents. Make sure they get their full sort of value in terms of weight. As you start to ramp this back up. And then you have the duple articulation after 80. This is the line below 80. So when we get to this, the second 16th of any duple slur, make sure it also gets its value. Dee da da dee da 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 dee da. So that second one isn't cut short too much. So let's come out of this section. Can you take it one? This is before 80. 1, 2, 3, and the pickups. 3 before with the pickups. See where that is? Good. Yeah. So let's do that. It's hard because we have to think about the macro phrase. And within that, you've got the duples. So can you think more about the broader phrase? Da 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 da. More of a da kind of long sound. Can you just do that high one? Just like that. There you go. Good. I like that. And then again, apply that across the board to all those duple phrases. It sounds more musical instead of dee da 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 da. Okay. And the thing I was hearing at square 80 with the mordents, I think I would actually like to hear space after the mordent. You're kind of going into the 16th note. It's a little compressed. So this is what? Pick up to 80. So between those, just a little bit of daylight, and it helps the rhythm not be too compressed. Can you try that right? The pickups to 80. Good. Yeah, now let the mordant go with a little zing behind, a little breath behind it, so it's resonating. That's it. Very good. Okay. So we talked about a lot of detail, little nuancy things like this, because your technical and musical ability is really great. So these little details are going to help boost this up to the next level, I think. So the release of the staccatos, just have an ear towards what you want that to sound like. Like kind of have it in your ear first, and then try and replicate it here. Maybe it means a little lighter with the tongue, or thinking about pulling away with the tongue and not hitting the reed, but coming away. And like breath behind it. We talked about kind of the macro phrasing through any articulated part. Yeah, I think those were my main points for the whole thing. It sounds great. Maybe one last thing would be the similarity of the staccato to any part where you have an accent. Okay, so some of these, let's look at, say, 110, or even before 110. 2 lines before square 110, where you have the high G, basically. After the high G, I'm thinking about my accent. There's a little front with the tongue, but really it's a swell of air. And it's the combination of both of those things. So maybe don't let the tongue like overpower the accent, but let the breath also be more emphatic. When you release the tongue. So it's similar to the staccato we were talking about in the way that you release the note. Only, of course, these are longer, more sustained after the accent. But yeah, so those kind of really specific articulation questions. And I think that's going to take everything up another notch. But thank you for playing, Claire. It sounds really, really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. So who do we have next?
Hey, my name is Abhishek.
Abhishek. Okay, good to see you. Same thing. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, okay. So I'm from Georgia and I'm in 11th grade. I've been playing for 6 years.
Cool. Which part of Georgia?
North, I guess, but I live in Duluth.
Okay, right on. And you're going to be playing the second movement?
Yeah, of Crest.
Okay, super. Great. Let's.
Okay.
Nice, nice, some very nice musical things happening. I mean, and this is so expressive, this movement. Okay, so there's a lot of directions we have to choose from in terms of time. And I like, you know, a lot of the expression that you're already infusing into this. I love your vibrato. It's like really perfect for the high, like intensity. Sounds really very good. So I think there's maybe a couple things to talk about overall in this movement. One is making a little more contrast. And again, this is a camera thing. It's kind of hard to hear completely the degrees of nuance you're getting with volume and dynamics. But something tells me there's a little more room to create bigger separation between ideas in this movement. And then some of it is time related. So we're going to clean up just a couple of feels, like with rhythm and time. In general, I think it might be a click or two on the slow side. Okay. So I kind of clocked it at about 50. So it's marked at 66, even though there's room in there to, if you want to play it slower, you can play it slower. But when parts slow down even more from a slow tempo, it gets just a little, maybe a little bogged down. So we might just explore some other tempo ideas. And then there was just one spot we'll get to rhythmically what's happening. So let's pick it up and let's try that a little brighter, just to, you know, hear what it feels like. If we keep a little stricter tempo, it's kind of something that falls a bit forward, even though we're relaxed. But just kind of this gentle, and you can still be expressive with it. So anything that's an 8th or a 16th note or a 16th triplet, if you think about those spilling a little bit forward. So even if the 8th notes are laid back in a slower tempo, keep the motion notes, you know, 16ths, triplets, just kind of moving forward a little bit more. Into the second line, I really liked how you got that intensity of the mezzo forte, maybe an even bigger drop to the subito pianissimo. So it really sustains the mezzo forte all the way through the end of that tie. You see where I'm at, the middle of the second line, yeah. And then just drop it immediately down to the subito. So let's take that first phrase from the beginning up through the end of the second line.
Yeah, okay.
There you go. I like the tempo. It's nice and relaxed still, but it has a little movement to it. Okay, let's dial back the piano even more. I feel like the second measure is already edging up to a mezzo piano, maybe mezzo forte. So we're getting there a little soon for my taste. So can you keep the whole thing like super hushed, really relaxed, really like this? Okay, really, and no movement in terms of volume until we get to that first crescendo, and then let it go. And again, then can you bring that down even less than the first volume we started at? Let's try that contrast. but even more of a surprise on the pianissimo. Like you're pulling it back, but not probably to what you could. So real surprise. And then that was the third time. So I want you to mark that G natural.
Yeah, I did.
With your pencil. So when you come up to that, really hushed. I can barely hear it. So let's did better in general, keeping the piano. Where it wants to creep up is in the long notes. So the second bar, the first beat, it starts to increase with volume there a little bit, and then your next pickup sort of, you know, you like want to start blowing more and more. So hold yourself back on the long notes. Like it's great that you want to use intensity of air, and you should, but now just don't let it crescendo. Just keep the foot at a soft dynamic. So let's do all that phrase one more time and really reserve. Good. So you got there by the end where it was really hushed and nice. But I would say just real contrast between the B flat and then to the A flat that follows, like immediately, like you're dropping a needle down and it's immediately softer, just for that effect. Okay, good. So let's go on to the next section. I liked all the louder stuff, and it had good movement to it. So where I thought it started to, it got a little slow, a little soon for me, where you're building up to the big climactic part with the high F before 30. So you should think about this section as being two buildups, okay, resulting in that high F, but there's actually one before it. So look after square 20.
Yeah, okay.
Where it says increase a little bit. Let's take it right there. And you're going to build up to that first D sharp, you know, right below it. But then it says softer, and we have an opportunity to pull it back both dynamically and maybe even a little tempo wise. Okay. And that's where we start our second build up to the high F. But beware where it says increase at the end of that line. I think it means increase in volume and in speed. So really the retard isn't until just before that high F. So let's take the first one where it says increase a little on that B flat. Can you play from there until the high F? Let's stop right there. Good. So where you just stopped, it says softer. Right. But I think because we didn't increase enough in tempo before, now this softer part sounds a little too slow to me. Yeah. So let's increase in speed as well, where it says increase a little bit. Build up again from there. One more time from that spot, a little speed to it.
Oh,
Yeah. So, and here's where it would actually increase instead of pull back. I felt
Yeah.
like the first time you played it, it pulled back a little bit. So
Okay.
let's take those dotted 8th, 16th rhythms. And every time you have la, ba, da, ba, da, let's boost it a notch in terms of speed and volume. So let's get into that where it says softer. You've got the triplets, but also make sure we don't feel each group of triplet. Do da 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 da. So instead, it's kind of like amorphous, like we're not really sure what the rhythm is, even though we know it's printed triplets. But can you smooth it out so it's not so clear for the listener? Good. Yes, I like that. So there was some desire to slow down before the high F on the first and second beats, but I would say even keep those still going forward up to the high E, because I liked the increase now. Boo, ba da, ba da, bum, ba da, ba da, bum, and those breaths can be kind of fast and help catapult this going forward. And then you can pull it back before getting to the high F. Ba da, ba da. Okay, so now let's stay really deliberate. And the first time you played this, I felt like you let up on the forte dynamic. This is 2 before a square 30, where you have the C D flat E flat.
Yeah.
So keep that as loud as what came before it. So don't let the intensity die through here. It's gonna stay all the way. So actually let's do the same place from those triplets and build it up again. Yes, very good. And of course, you would finish that phrase, ba, da, 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 all the way to beat.
Yeah, I just ran out of air.
Yeah, you ran out of air, sure. That's a good thing. That means you were really giving it what you needed to. So yeah, learn to pace your breath now in context of playing really full up through there. Okay, so rhythmically here at 30 and what comes next, I think you were double holding 2 beats or something for the ba, da, 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 da. So it's still the same tempo. It can be very deliberate, 1 and 2 and, but make sure the rhythms fit inside of there. The 30-second notes can be super snappy, like really, I think it's okay to even compress them, okay? But still make sure the big beats stay in time.
Mm.
Some extra weight on that 8th note that it ends on. So, well, just do that. Just do that much.
From the
Square or bar after 30. one measure after square 30.
Oh, okay.
Good. Da-da-da. It's almost a full quarter note. And you can add a little vibrato like you had before. Ba, da-da-da, da-da-da. One more time, and don't let up on the intensity here. Yeah, good, good, good. Okay, super. So let's now go to the second part of this. So the ending is a little bit different than the rest of the piece. In the way, and just the nature of its, you know, we're slowing things down. It's a lot calmer. And here's where we want to let the triplet, again, we're going for that sort of lazy amorphous triplet, very connected. So we almost can't tell what the time is because you've got eighths, sixteenths, and then you've got some 16th triplets, some normal triplets. So let's try and get as blurry as possible, you know, while still maintaining some time. So we're back to this section is traditionally played a little bit slower, but maybe not quite as slow as you had it. Just relaxed. Let's pick it up right there, this next section.
Okay.
Good. So you breathed right at square 40, and I would ask if you can move that breath 2 beats later. Like play all the way through that tie. Da, da, dee, da, da. Breathe. Da, 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 and then take the next phrase.
Okay.
So try not to, break that up too much. Good. I think you're still a little loud in volume, and you want to push more volume as you know, as the line rises and you get these triplets, which is natural to do. But let's see if you can reserve yourself a little bit more, and just think like real stasis. There's no not too much inflection happening here. We've just had this really climactic part, and now we're returning like the beginning, and let the line speak for itself, like rise and fall, and you don't have to add any extra inflection or volume to it. Just let the line kind of naturally rise. This is the part where we can now begin to add some volume. And you can be deliberate at square 40 where I just finished with the breath. You can pull back beats 2 and 3 as a kind of ending of this whole section before we build up again. And it gives you space to take that breath after beat 3. So let's do that whole time. We've got time. Let's do that whole section again and just real reserved. Hold it back.
Wait, I had a question. Which beats did you say to slow down on?
This is at square 40. You can slow down 2 and 3.
Oh, okay.
Triplet into the eighth note. Do da dee da 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 da.
Okay.
Okay.
Mark that.
Yeah, so A flat. That was very good. That was very, I felt there were the moments where you knew you were gonna wanted to play and you held it back a little bit. So even more of that as you go through this. Okay, so we'll talk about the very end now. You've got the build up that we just came to with the hairpin crescendo. I think you kind of did it in reverse, but sometimes you hear the second statement of this. This is the bar below where it says square 40. You kind of hear that as an echo, because we just heard it once. The second one is really hushed, and some people use the alternate keys for that D sharp. Do you know that fingering?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
So it's possible to play that D sharp really soft by using your your high F key, palm key. So just try it, just only that alone, the third palm key.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we call that like a false fingering or an alternate fingering, and really only when you're playing super soft, because those come out like really hushed. So you might think about using that there. And then back to the higher volume. This is that middle line at the end of the line. You see that? So you might boost the tempo or the volume there and sustain it until you get the decrescendo for the last 2 bars. So why don't let's see if we can take all of this. Let's see. I missed my warning here. Let's see what time it is. We're good. We have a couple minutes. So let's do the pickups is bar 40 on the third beat.
Okay.
So that, and then loud right there. Ba, da, da, da.
Okay.
So let's take it from there and then gradually fade to the end.
Okay.
and as much taper as you can get, just kind of fade to nothing.
Mhm.
The A before that, actually, it sounds pretty good pitch-wise. Normally, it can be very sharp, and that chord with the piano can be very difficult intonation-wise. So I basically always put a third finger down on my right hand when I'm playing that penultimate A. Okay, so you can add that, and it'll just bring that pitch down for the A. Very good. And then I would say before the end, 1, 2, 3, the low F sharp.
Mm.
Okay, you want to actually stay pretty loud and robust all the way to that F sharp.
Oh,
Don't decrescendo until after that.
okay.
So the last statement that's loud. I'm still a good volume right there. And then I can pull back, and it gives me some room to get softer.
Okay.
Awesome. So we've made some notes about some dynamic nuance things and some rhythmic pacing. But great to hear you play Abhishek. It sounds really great.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not hearing any of you. I know, and you weren't muted at all. It's just, I don't know why I'm not hearing. What's going on? Okay. I don't know if my volume is doing something weird, but I'm sorry. But I think we have Daniel next. Is that right? Okay, Daniel, can you unmute and see if I can hear you?
Hey, Mr. Temme.
Okay, I got Daniel. Okay, awesome. Sorry, Yuna, I couldn't hear you, but we'll move on here, Daniel, and remind me which one you're doing.
I'm doing the Handel Sonata of Movement 1.
Okay, and tell me some similar things where you're from.
Okay, so I'm from Maryland. I currently study with Mr. George Etheridge.
Oh yeah. Oh great.
Yeah, I've been studying with him for about 6 years right now, and I just graduated high school, and I'm going to. I'm not majoring in music.
Very good. Awesome. Congratulations.
Oh yeah, I'm also doing the Army ROTC program there too.
Oh good. Okay. Sweet. Very good. Cool. And how much of the Handel are you playing?
Just the first movement.
Okay. Cool. Let's hear it.
All right.
Nice. Okay, very, very good. Great expression. This is particularly well, I think, suited for the saxophone, coming from violin. And it's got some challenges only in the respect that, like Baroque kind of music, in a way you have to let it sort of play itself in a way. Like you don't have to, there's not a lot of additive that we need to give all the time. So there's a fine line between expression and letting the rhythm and harmony that he's built into this, just let it go. And I like the balance actually that you're getting with that. Sometimes there might be some added inflection in kind of the smaller micro parts of a rhythm, say. It's like I'm almost feeling stresses on some of the ands or some of the in between the rhythms, where I want to hear really just, again, like an overall very horizontal rhythmic thing. And this being slow as it is, it's challenging to like find where that line is. So let's do the opening and see if we can't get more of an overall shape, like a broader shape, instead of each micro like feeling of the eighth note. So I think what's hard is on the release of any given note to not like push slightly at the end of one or two notes, rather like seam them together where there's kind of blocks of sound that make it sound really uniform. Okay, so let's try that opening phrase, just run the long line. There you go. Good. The camera cut out in the very first part, but I think you're getting the idea overall. We'll pick it up again from the mezzo forte where you just stopped. I want to hear you play a little bit more. Let's go to the cadence before A. Beautiful, good. So I liked the crescendo and the build up to that cadence point. I would say the piano, there could be a bigger distinction there. And maybe on the tenuto 16ths, you could think about maybe not using vibrato because you're using it before. So maybe a way to draw emphasis from some of those tenuto markings would just be to play them sustained. Gradually added, but it could be a mechanism to build intensity, by the removal of vibrato. Just something to consider in terms of how we're using vibrato, so that's just not on everything, but we use it specifically for where we want to add color, or not using it where we want to build intensity, or keep things like really uniform. Good, I like that a lot. Can I hear you do that one more time? Let's take this at the mezzo forte again. This is the end of the second measure to that same cadence. you go. Very nice. Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, well, let's just keep going. So we're at A, and again, we're going for just that really uniform. It's kind of like we want to give enough interest to keep it propelled forward, and yet we're still at a relaxed tempo. So very difficult to do, actually. So kind of bring us along by pulling that rope through the center of the phrase, and yet you're reserved enough to keep the pace nice and steady. So let's see if we can get that happening here at A. Good. And I think you could probably start that phrase a little softer. So really, let's truly bring it down. And again, it's the camera. It's like I can't really hear your total what you're doing. But my perception at this point is like, well, I think there could be greater contrast. Like right where you start at A could be super hushed, and then make a little bit more when you get to the forte, and then sustain the forte through the ties. And let's use the breaths as kind of amplifiers to the interest of this thing. So you're using the breath actually as an like an activation. It's not just like, oh, I need air, which you do, but let's also use it musically to boost the intensity of this phrase before we bring it to the cadence point. One more time at A, really, really hushed. Nice. Yeah. See, that had interest to me. That was very good. It had movement. It kind of kept me there. And then it's kind of a musical choice how you end that phrase. So you have another piano phrase coming up, softer phrase coming up. So just think about, do you want to keep that sustained as a more forte cadence, or do you want to intentionally bring it down? I think there's a lot of room in Baroque music to make all these decisions. And that would just be one of them. So just be aware. I mean, we get some markings from Mule about, broadly how to understand the shapes and phrases. But there's secondary decisions that are more nuanced. Okay, so something like that cadence point would be one. Okay, and then as we go forward, let me see. Yeah, similar. Can we actually skip over to B? Because I want to get these downward slurs in that second measure after B, and just kind of keeping the pull again through the phrase. So let's start right at B. Nice. So we're gonna have another build-up after this point. So, and even the way I played it, I think maybe had too much inflection in it. So again, I'm wondering if there's a way we can just keep that, letting the notes just speak for themselves without adding anything extra. prepare the listener for that by like just not adding anything at B. Really straight, really the same dynamically, even inflection. Let's just keep it super simple. So can you do that one more time at B, but then keep going? Good, good, good. So I like that at B, just keeping really calm through that section. It's then any of the long eighth notes. It's actually quite hard to do this without keeping them, again, just start to finish the same. Almost want to, like blossom each note in this type of music, but it can be super effective if it's just nothing really happening with the breath, other than shaping the very long phrase. And then when you start the crescendo, I felt it lost a little intensity on the E flat. This is 1, 2, 3 after B. And there's a breath mark. I mean, we're playing a wind instrument, but think about it, the violin is not going to have that constraint. So they're going to take the vibration of the string straight into that next rhythm. I mean, we have to breathe, but it's like, how can we integrate the breath in an interesting way without losing the intensity of this line? So really think about that breath 3 after B when you play it this time. Okay, so start at B one more time, and even get that really placid kind of feeling, and then build the intensity through the crescendo one more time. Excellent. Okay, I love the breaths. I mean, that was really well integrated into the whole phrase, and they were faster and they were more active. So to me, they made sense because they actually added intensity in the way that you took them and made them work musically. Very cool. That was perfect. Maybe a little more retard for my taste when you come to the end of this. You have kind of 2 separate endings to this first section. So you're in diminuendo. This is after the climactic part. This is 2 before the ending. So as you come down, let's think of how we should do this. Expect this part, the long, broad part. So I would take your time through that retard at the very end. And then we get this coda that's section, that are these couple bars that are an extension of that in a essence. Take it from the high, where I started, 3 before the end, and let's see if we can't get a little more pull through the end of this. Yeah, I like that. Okay, it was a little stretch on the retard. I think that the low G could maybe get even a little bit, because I like how the retard progressed, but make sure it extends all the way through until the trill. Good, and the ending sounds convincing. You can do that a number of ways, but I like what you're doing, as long as the like the release of the tongue is kind of weighty, and through the end. Yeah, good. So the hard thing in this kind of music, and thinking about what it was written for, it's just kind of difficult to let music sometimes speak for itself. But in this instance, you don't have to do much, and sometimes we find ourselves compelled to, push, because we might be used to doing that and playing. I love your air pressure and your sense of, deliberate phrasing, which is super good. We want to balance that out from the kind of like micro aspect of rhythms and the nuance of what's going on here, versus spacing that out over a broader spectrum of this, in this movement in particular. So I think that's what the challenge is. So you might just think about, how can I best extend the broader phrase across, lines of music, and rather than just bars or even individual rhythms. Does that make sense? Yeah, beautiful playing though. I think that's great. Nice to hear you, Daniel. Thanks for playing. Cool. So I think we'll leave that piece there. I didn't know if we wanted to do, if anybody on here wants to, do any Q&A, or if anything came up for anybody. If you want to have your cameras and you can unmute yourself if you want. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the music you heard, or about saxophone or careers, or I'm happy to stick around if you want to do that. I know we're kind of up against the time we had here, so if we have to go too, that's cool. But is there anything anybody wanted to end with?
Yeah, I had a question. Can you hear me?
I can now, thanks.
Okay, great. And I didn't get to say it, but really nice job to Daniel and Abhishek. You guys both sounded amazing. So I was wondering, I know that you have experience playing as in an ensemble in the Marine Band and also as a soloist. So what's the difference between playing as a soloist versus as an ensemble player, and which one do you enjoy more?
Ooh, I probably enjoy playing in the ensemble more. They're super different, Sitting in the ensemble, we're dealing with so many issues of response and intonation. Those are the two things that leap to mind. Because as a saxophonist, we play a really unique role in the band, because we're filling between high winds and low winds. And the four of us, 2 altos, tenor, Barry, are individually playing with even different sections of the band. So we're not always unified in our section, which is an extra challenge. So I think I've learned the most about honing my ear, certainly with intonation and playing with different sections of the band, or even an orchestra when I play in that capacity, and just knowing exactly where to place things. So a couple of you, we talked about pitch tendencies and intonation, you know, playing scales with drones, doing a lot of pitch work and building flexibility here, and manually, like knowing the tricks of the instrument, you know, where to add fingers or release fingers that can like super fine tune intonation. So it's kind of fun in the band in that way. And again, like response, we have to play sometimes just things that are unbelievably soft, and learning that connection with the breath and the read and release of sound is quite a challenge. So when you're a soloist, you don't have to so much worry about that, because you can just, you know, you're playing something super deliberate, and you're dictating how those things go, which is actually really fun. I play a solo in the band maybe every 2 years or so, and it's great to have those kind of goals before you, and you're really working something up, if it's like really technically challenging and pushing yourself. It's harder for me now to play really loud because I don't get to do that a lot in the band and the ensemble, even though we play loud for sure. But it's within a spectrum. So as a soloist, you're like really out there, and I like doing that because it forces me to modify, you know, even how I understand dynamic nuance in a different way. So it's its own challenge. I like doing both of them, but I just love sitting in the band because you're just surrounded by this huge pad of sound, and you're finding your place within that. So yeah, good question.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
All right. This is not really a question, but Mr. Etheridge told me you used to like do a lot of workshops with him in the past with Capital Wind Symphony.
I have, yeah, I've done quite a few, and I don't know if he still leads that SCORE program in our area, but it was an educational outreach program for schools, and I would see him. Mr. Etheridge would lead. He would conduct a lot of those bands, and I would come in and help the saxophone section. So I've gotten to know him over the years here, so it's been a good connection with him. And I know George studied in Paris, and I studied in Paris as well after college. So I spent 2 years there at a conservatory, and it was just an amazing experience, and something for the saxophone that's like, you know, a huge tradition of French saxophone playing. So George Etheridge and I always shared that, you know, kind of cool connection. So yeah, always fun to catch up with him, although I haven't seen him in a couple of years now, but yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll tell him you said hi.
Please do. Yeah, absolutely. And for my Georgia people, I know, man, there's some awesome saxophone players I know in Atlanta and some of the schools, actually all over the state. When we go on tour, you know, I've been to a lot of Georgia schools teaching in some of those programs. There's some awesome teachers in Atlanta and all over the place there. So very good place for saxophone down there.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing about how you just know all the saxophones in the area. I think like as you just play music, you get to know a lot of people around the United States. Okay, any last questions from anyone?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, if you're like revisiting an old piece that you've already played, how do you like approach like you know, digging back into it and like getting it back up to speed?
Excellent question. Because this happens, yeah, to your whole musical life where you'll come back to something over and over again, especially if it's a standard repertoire piece. Like, I probably haven't played Treston in quite a few years, but I've been teaching it to different students. And even when I come to teaching it, it feels different. I'm to have a strong baseline for when I first learned that piece, which is probably what you're doing now. You're establishing a baseline of, you know, like, how does it go? You know, how do I feel certain things, combined with the performance history of the piece itself. You know, some works just have certain ways that their play that might not be notated specifically, and you're kind of learning tradition. So what's cool is when you come back to a piece later, you you kind of have more freedom to adhere to tradition or, you know, do something different with it. And I find that I'm making like broader musical decisions when I revisit a piece because I don't feel so tied to how I first learned it. Even though I'm really glad that I learned it really solid the first time and like in a traditional way. And I think that's what master teachers are good for. And you know, they're teaching you how something is done and accepted and heard on a piece. But then when you can come back to something years later and hear it quite differently. And you might have a facility that is like muscle memory from the first time or 2 times you played it. And so that aspect is a little more relaxed. You're like, oh, I know this. It's, you know, I'm not freaking out about the technique of the actual piece. And that's cool because it broadens your musical decision making at that point. So that's why I like, you know, revisiting pieces like that. And because it does feel different every time you come back to something, no matter how many times you played it. Good question.
Thank you for the response. Any last burning questions? Okay, then I think we'll end the masterclass here. Thank you everyone so much for coming, and thank you to Mr. Temme for teaching today. I really enjoyed listening to all of your performances and the feedback. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you guys. All right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Temme.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye everyone.